Raider Nation, what's up? Welcome back to another update on your Las Vegas Raiders. After Week 1 of the NFL season, the Raiders managed to escape not just one, but two major problems that could have completely changed the direction of this team. And trust me, these are the kind of bullets you're glad your team avoided. Before we dive into the details of the first one, let me quickly remind you, if you love getting the latest Raiders news, make sure to hit that subscribe button, drop a like, and don't forget to turn on the bell icon so you never miss an update. Now let's get into it. The first big dodge came with the head coach situation. A lot of people around Raider Nation wanted Ben Johnson to take over. He was one of the hottest names out there, and plenty of fans believed he was the right choice. But instead, Johnson ended up going to the Chicago Bears. At the time, some were disappointed, but in hindsight, the Raiders absolutely lucked out. Why? Because instead of Johnson, Las Vegas ended up with Pete Carroll, a coach who brought stability, leadership, and the kind of experience this team desperately needed. Under Carroll, the Raiders kept Patrick Graham in the mix, landed Chip Kelly for innovation, and even swung a deal to bring in Geno Smith for just a third-round pick. That's a chain reaction that doesn't happen without Carroll at the helm. Watching Chicago's collapse on Monday Night Football just proves it further. Johnson's Bears looked solid early, but completely fell apart as the game went on. Meanwhile, the Raiders avoided stepping into that mess and instead landed a coach who can keep this team competitive right away. Raider Nation, I'll be honest, at first, even I thought Ben Johnson was the guy. But looking back now, I couldn't be happier that the Raiders went with Pete Carroll, who's about to turn 74 and still brings the fire of a coach half his age. His energy and leadership have already changed the tone of this team. Here's why it matters. Great teams find ways to grind out ugly wins. Bad teams, on the other hand, let winnable games slip away, and that's exactly what happened to Johnson's Chicago Bears in Week 1. They completely unraveled in the second half, giving up 21 points in the fourth quarter alone. That's the kind of collapse the Raiders have suffered through in past seasons under the wrong leadership, and it's exactly what we've been desperate to move away from. Second half adjustments were a nightmare for Chicago. The Bears were outgained so badly that at one point, the stat line was 164 yards to -1. Think about that. A coach can draw up all the clever X's and O's in the world, but if they can't lead, motivate, and adapt in real time, they're not cut out to be a head coach. Raider fans have lived through that with Josh McDaniels, and we know the pain of watching winnable games turn into heartbreak. And then, there's clock management. Chicago mismanaged the end of that game so badly they didn't even give themselves a chance. That's not the type of decision-making you want from the leader of your team. The Raiders, with Pete Carroll steering the ship, avoided stepping right into that same disaster. One thing separates the great coaches from the rest: they stay in control of the game. That's something the Raiders didn't have for years. Under Josh McDaniels, under Antonio Pierce, even at times under John Gruden, it always felt like the team was reacting instead of dictating. But now, with Pete Carroll on the sideline, there's a sense of confidence. For the first time in a long time, Raider Nation can look at the field and honestly believe we might have the best coach out there. Discipline is another area where you see the difference. Take Chicago in Week 1. They racked up 12 penalties for 157 yards. That's how you throw away a winnable game. Raiders fans know that story all too well from past seasons: sloppy mistakes, mental errors, and a lack of accountability. Carroll's approach is different. He demands focus, and his teams don't beat themselves with careless penalties. Ben Johnson, on the other hand, looked like a coach overwhelmed in his first big test. The Bears weren't just outplayed, they were undisciplined and unprepared. Raider Nation has been there before, and it's the exact nightmare we avoided by not going down that path. All offseason long, we kept asking the same question: who's the better head coach, Pete Carroll or Ben Johnson? And honestly, Raider Nation, the answer is becoming clearer by the day. Pete Carroll isn't just a good coach, He's the right coach for the Raiders. He brings experience, discipline, and a proven track record of building programs from the ground up. He commands respect the moment he walks into the locker room, and that's something this team has been missing for years. Think about it. Under Josh McDaniels, players questioned the vision. Under Antonio Pierce, there was energy but not enough structure. Under John Gruden, it often felt like we were living on chaos. But with Pete Carroll, the Raiders finally have a leader that players can buy into without hesitation. Every guy in that locker room can look at him and say, "This man has done it before, and he can lead us to do it again." And that buy-in is huge. You can see it already. Less confusion on the field, sharper execution, and a belief that the Raiders are actually building something sustainable. That's not just hype, it's culture. And culture is what separates playoff teams from the ones who fold in November. So while Chicago fans are left wondering if Ben Johnson was a mistake, Raider Nation can breathe easy knowing they've got a coach who has won at the highest level in both college and the NFL. Carroll isn't just a stopgap. He's laying the foundation for a new era of Raiders football. Now, Raider Nation, that's only the first bullet this team dodged. There's still another one, and this next one takes us back in time a bit. It's a story that'll really test your memory, but it's one every true Raider fan will appreciate. Let's hop into the time machine and talk about the second big bullet the Raiders managed to avoid. Now let's talk about the second big bullet the Raiders dodged this offseason, and that's Mike Vrabel. Early in the coaching search, Vrabel's name was right at the top of the list. In fact, he was the first serious candidate the Raiders looked into after moving on from Antonio Pierce. And if you follow the offseason rumors, you know Tom Brady himself was pushing hard for Vrabel to come to Las Vegas. But here's the thing, Vrabel never made it to the desert. As soon as New England moved on from Jared Mayo, Vrabel was tied to the Patriots almost instantly. That left the Raiders searching elsewhere, which ultimately opened the door for Pete Carroll. Looking back, Raider Nation should be thankful it worked out that way. Vrabel is a strong defensive mind, no doubt, but the Raiders needed more than just that. They needed leadership, culture, and someone who could bring balance to both sides of the ball. Pete Carroll provided that. Instead of chasing after another coach trying to figure it out, the Raiders landed a proven winner who knows how to build programs that last. So when you think about it, dodging Vrabel wasn't a loss, it was a blessing. Because if the Raiders had gone down that road, they might still be searching for answers instead of actually building a future. And then, of course, the Raiders ended up with Pete Carroll. Now, let's be real. At first, he wasn't the top option. Vrabel and Ben Johnson were ahead of him in the conversation. But looking at it now, I'm glad he was the one who actually landed in Las Vegas. Here's why. Vrabel is a motivator. He's tough, fiery, and he'll get players ready to run through a wall. That sounds great on paper, and it reminded me a lot of Antonio Pierce. Both were linebackers, both carried that old school "strap it up and let's go" mentality. They'll say all the right things to get you hyped. But the truth is, motivation only goes so far. At some point, a coach has to make adjustments. A coach has to outthink his opponent, not just out-yell him. And that's where Vrabel, much like Pierce, has struggled. We saw it again with New England. Just like Ben Johnson in Chicago, Vrabel failed to adjust in the second half. That's a killer in today's NFL. You can't win consistently if you're getting outcoached when it matters most. Vrabel has been coach of the year before, and yes, he's a good coach, but good isn't enough for a franchise trying to rebuild into a powerhouse. So if you ask me right now, Pete Carroll, Mike Vrabel, or Ben Johnson, I'm taking Carroll every single time. Because choosing Carroll over both of them wasn't just a hire, it was a dodged bullet twice over. And that brings me to the final reason why I'm thrilled the Raiders went this route. The biggest difference, and maybe the most important one, has nothing to do with hype or headlines. It's about what Carroll is creating inside that building right now, a true culture shift for the Raiders. Now let's get into the final reason why the Raiders dodged that second bullet. It comes down to something that often gets overlooked but might be the most important part of any head coach's job: the people they hire around them. Look at what happened with the alternatives. Mike Vrabel went out and brought in Josh McDaniels. Yes, the same McDaniels that Raider Nation already suffered through. We know how that story ends: lack of adjustments, broken locker rooms, and wasted opportunities. Ben Johnson? Honestly, it's hard to even remember who he brought in, because nothing about his staff stood out. And if your coaching hires don't stand out, that usually means they're not making an impact. Now compare that to Pete Carroll. He didn't just bring in names. He built a staff designed to maximize the Raiders' roster. He found a way to keep Patrick Graham to maintain defensive continuity. He added Chip Kelly to spark offensive creativity. And on top of all that, he helped pull off the move for Geno Smith, a quarterback who fits perfectly into what this team is trying to build. That doesn't happen without Carroll. It's not just about his leadership. It's about the connections, the trust, and the ability to put the right people in the right roles. That's how you build a program. And for the Raiders, that's how you avoid repeating the same mistakes of the past. So, when we talk about dodging bullets, this one might be the biggest of them all. By avoiding Vrabel and Johnson, the Raiders ended up with not just a head coach, but a head coach who knew how to surround himself with the right people. And that, Raider Nation, is the foundation of a winning franchise. Let's be honest, Raider Nation, the difference between what other teams ended up with and what the Raiders have right now is night and day. Look at Chicago with Luke Getsy compared to Las Vegas with Chip Kelly. That's not even close. It's like comparing a clunker to a Ferrari. And here's the scary part for other teams: bad coaching staffs ruin talent. We've seen it before, and we're probably about to see it again. Josh McDaniels is now paired with Drake May in New England, and if history tells us anything, that's not going to end well. Wrong coach, wrong system, and a young quarterback left to struggle. Meanwhile in Las Vegas, it's the opposite. Pete Carroll built a staff that actually sets players up to succeed. Geno Smith and Chip Kelly already look like one of the smartest fits in the league. Add Patrick Graham staying in charge of the defense, and you've got balance on both sides of the ball. And let's be real, Kelly and Graham probably only came here because they saw the long-term opportunity. Carroll may not coach forever, but by being part of this staff, they put themselves in line for future head coaching shots. That's how you attract talent. Put it all together, and the Raiders don't just have a head coach. They've built one of the strongest coaching staffs in the NFL. And we saw it immediately in Week 1. While other teams collapsed in the second half, the Raiders adjusted, fought through, and pulled out a tough win. That's what good teams do. So, when you look back at this offseason, it's clear: Las Vegas dodged not one, but two massive bullets. They avoided Ben Johnson. They avoided Mike Vrabel. And instead, they landed Pete Carroll, along with the culture, the staff, and the quarterback that came with him. That's why, Raider Nation, for the first time in a long time, it feels like this team is moving in the right direction. And it all started with the right hire.